Well, good evening and welcome to the KFNS Amateur Drum Antique Society tasting. And this evening I'm going to look at, and I'm going to do a few of these, looking at closed distilleries. This evening I'm going to be looking at a Caperdonich, uh, and I'm going to actually make a bit of a comparison, not a direct comparison. This is not a duel, but a wondering investigation into the beauty of age and history. And I've got from Decadent Drams, I've got two samples of a Glen Grant Whiskyland Chapter 14 Glen Grant 30-year-old at 46.6%, and Whiskyland Chapter 18 Gone Grant, which is what they term Caperdonich. Gone Grant 1994 30-year-old, bottled at 51.2%. And it's not a direct comparison. You can see straight away that there's a difference in colour here. This is the Caperdonich, which has a sherry influence, and this is the Glen Grant, which has been taken from two refill barrels. So first up, we have the Glen Grant. Well, actually, I'll talk a little bit about the Caperdonich distillery first of all. At the end of the 19th century, whiskey was booming, and James Grant decided to expand. And Caperdonich was founded, but at that time it got the name Glen Grant Number 2. It was built right behind the Glen Grant distillery, but the whiskey boom didn't last long. A crash followed, and already in 1902, Caperdonich was mothballed. As Caperdonich had been built to copy the whiskey style of the Glen Grant, it served as a kind of spare parts depot for its big brother. Then in the 1960s, the demand for whiskey increased again, and the owners of Caperdonich decided to restore the sleeping distillery and start production again. Meanwhile, Grant Distillers had merged with Glenlivet and some blending companies and had formed the Glenlivet Distillers Limited in 1972. Modernisation took place, and already in the first year after reopening in 1965, more than 1.3 million litres of spirit were produced. And 2 years later, capacity was increased by installing another pair of stills, and from now on, steam heated, and they installed more washbacks. Production became automated to a high degree. In 1977, Seagram's bought the distillery, and most of the produced whisky was now used for their blends like Chivas Regal. In 2001, Pernod Ricard became the owner and mothballed Caperdonich 1 year later. Big parts of the site were sold to Forsyths in 2010, who tore down the distillery buildings in 2011. Caperdonich started whisky production in 1898. The goal was to imitate the Glen Grant style. The same water source was used as well, and the equivalent barley as well. Because the Glen Grant 2 wasn't regarded as a separate distillery by the tax office, but as an extension of Glen Grant, they had to fill it into casks at Glen Grant. A pipeline was used to connect the two distilleries, and the spirit from Caperdonich was pumped through it. This changed in 1965 when production at Caperdonich was restarted after it had been stopped for more than 60 years. New regulations had come up, and it had to be regarded as its own distillery. So it is now branded as Caperdonich after the water source, the Caperdonich well. It is the English pronunciation for the Gaelic Caperdonich and means secret well. 1.3 million litres was the production capacity then. When Caperdonich was closed finally in 2002, the annual production capacity was about 2 million litres. When Caperdonich was closed, a stainless steel mash tun with a copper lid had been in use that could take 4.6 tonnes of mash. 8 washbacks had been in use at Caperdonich with a capacity of 23,000 litres each. They were installed when expansion took place in 1967, and giving this to me a local interest. For 2 of them, a new life has begun when Wilburn Distillery at Thurso was built. They got these washbacks and use them as water tanks now. One for wastewater and the other for water from the Wilburn water supply. They do reassure us that they don't never get them mixed up. In 1898, one wash still and one spirit still began copying the Glen Grant style of whisky production. In 1967, a second pair were installed. The wash stills had a capacity of 11,500 litres each, the spirit stills of 7,000 litres, and the new pot stills were steam heated, a very modern technology at that time. When the distillery was demolished in 2011, one pair of stills was sold to Belgian distillery and the other to a new distillery in Falkirk. Some of the former Caperdonich warehouses are still used for cask maturation, and some others became storage space for Forsyths. The style of Caperdonich whisky could be described as light, fruity and a bit nutty. They aimed to copy the Glen Grant style, but were in fact a little bit fruitier even. There's not many original bottlings of Caperdonich single malt whisky available, but independent bottlers offer releases from casks left in their stock from time to time. There is, for example, a Caperdonich 1992 2013 in the Connoisseur's Choice series of Gordon MacPhail that was matured in refill sherry casks, and that presents as a light tropical fruits, bananas and a hint of milk chocolate. Another that was recently released is the Caperdonich 17-year-old distilled 95, bottled 2012 of Signatory. It's part of the Unchill Filtered series and limited to 731 bottles. And it's well balanced with aromas of malts and nuts and a hint of menthol and sherry. So the first whisky I have here is a Glen Grant, not a Caperdonich. It's just to make a comparison. And it's quite a light whisky. I've got this little 2cl sample. You can see that's quite light. And that's it's a small batch multi-vintage marriage of 2 refill barrels of Glen Grant from 1994 and 1995 respectively, making this 30 years old. And it's a natural cask strength as Whiskyland Chapter 14, non-chill filtered and natural colour, and after 30 years you can see that natural colour there. So this is 46.6% and it's cask strength, so 30 years it's lost a bit, and it's got quite a thin tide line. Nice sticky tears though, and it's got an immediate waxiness, and that's accompanied by gentle mineral notes, hints of Mirabelle plums, some Hessian and puff wheat, and a bit of lemon pith, classic Glen Grant nose. And there's a touch of sunflower oil. The tears are fantastic on this now. And some powdered sugar, vanilla custard and chalk. It's lovely, delicate stuff. A basket of fully ripe pears and apples, completed with a little barley syrup and acacia honey. And it's only got the faintest methylated touches. A few vineyard peaches. It's simply perfect, I think, this nose. Yeah, that's a stunning nose on this. I'll try the palate. And the waxiness translates nicely to the palate, but it's accompanied by sweet notes of marshmallow, then some ripe bananas and caramel glazed apples. And then you get stewed apples and candied fruits, as well as a hint of nectarines. The apples and custard glide over the pears in this subtle and curiously refreshing mix. And that unfolds into lime blossom, thyme honey, and a few citrus notes, and a slightly mentholated pepper that grows increasingly assertive. And the finish is medium length, with a touch of fennel, whiff of sponge, and some sandalwood, and maybe some honey as well. I think this is great meat, but I'm going to, just for interest, add 5 drops of water. And yeah, it's very ripe apples now. Pears and kiwis. And then I get some bananas, pineapples and mangoes. It's not a fruit bomb as such, but it's a very, very seductive nose. And there's more vanilla comes through after a while. And a little tobacco and cafe latte. And it's perhaps a touch chalkier with water. Try them out. And it's creamy. Even fruitier than it was in the nose, but also quite gingery. Also some white pepper and nutmeg from the oak. Other than that, there's strawberry drops, orange drops, and a pleasant feeling of tinned pineapples again. And with water, the finish is medium to short in length. Slightly more on the herbal side, which is quite expected. A bit drier again, with the white pepper and cinnamon growing bigger, and with apple peelings. This is just textbook stuff. Polished, mature Glen Grant with a delicate touch not often seen. It's beautifully natural. Refill matured Glen Grant. that balances elegant fruitiness with firmer waxy and mineral tones. It's another top Glen Grant to gulp down with no further justification than taking sheer pleasure from it. I'm gonna cleanse my palate with some apple crisp with a dark chocolate and salted caramel twist from Gusto. Thought these would go well with Glen Grant. Very nice. So next we're moving on to the Caperdonich, and this you can see I've kept some of it on back just to do a side by side taste comparison. But this is Whiskyland Chapter 8, and so I'm going to pour again a little over half of this. Keep some back to make a side by side comparison. But this one is a 1994 Glen Grant and Caperdonich that underwent a 4-year secondary maturation in fresh sherry hogshead. So this one, distilled 94, bottled 2025, and bottled at 51.2%. So it's had a 4-year secondary maturation in a fresh sherry hogshead, which explains the colour being considerably darker than the Glen Grant of a similar age. And it's got a thin tide line again, but again quite impressive tears. And now it's much more waxy. You do get the fact it's a slightly higher ABV, 46.6 the last one, this one's 51.2. But you get quinces and stewed apples, and then you get tarragon and chamomile, and you get the sherry from the slivers of cigar boxes, scuff leather and sandalwood, and you also get damp oak and a sort of faint dunnage notes with a tinge of mushrooms. It's got papaya, guavo, mangoes and bananas, and honey and natural vanilla. It's very alluring. Let's try the mouth. And it's a lovely waxy mouthfeel. Touches of honey, fennel, and an assortment of dried fruit, and a light chalkiness. Wonderful tears on this now. And you also get brighter fruits, passion fruit, hint of lemon, and some pear skin. It's very delicate, leaning towards fruit salad with a touch of cinnamon and honey. But there's a complex oak subtly underpinning everything. But the oak doesn't impose itself too much. It's a very soft licorice. And the finish is gentle and well balanced, but with a hint of white pepper, plums, and jammy apricots. It's rounded, medium in length, but growing even fruitier than actual fruits. Get jelly beans and babies in the aftertaste, which is rather unexpected at 30 years of age. I'll put 5 drops of water in this. And now it's full of those church candles, the wee church candles. It's refined, elegant, with wafts of classic perfume and high-end beauty creams. It does grow increasingly floral with water, with pronounced honeysuckle, rose petals. It's restrained, jasmine, orange blossom, and then it drifts off towards ripe bananas. And the bananas are there in a palette of water, drizzled with honey, pollen, gentle methylated glimmers, beeswax, touch of praline, white clover, a touch more citrus, and some far-off whispers of grand champagne. And the finish is not very long, but always fruity, lively, and slightly more exotic. Even at this stage, the wood never dominates. I'll take a slug of water and I'm going to pour the rest of these. Try them side by side. So 60 years of whiskey, 30 years each. So you can see in the glass the difference in colour. This is the Caperdonich with the sherry influence. This is the Glen Grant. And it's definitely more waxy, the Glen Grant. Sorry, the Caperdonich's more waxy. It's deeper and darker, the Caperdonich. The Glen Grant, you get that apples, pears, kiwis, bananas, pineapples, and mango. Whereas the Caperdonich is certainly deeper, darker, get more oak, cigar box, leatheriness. They're both very fruity. I think the Glen Grant is probably more rounded, but the Caperdonich is wonderfully illuminating. Try the mouth. Glen Grant first. I would say it's quite sweet now. marshmallow, ripe bananas, and caramel glazed apples. I'll try the Caperdonich. Yeah, it's a light austerity with Caperdonich, which I like. I think it's something that's been associated with Caperdonich from this era. But at this age, and considering the 4 year sherry finish, it has dissipated mostly that austerity. What you're left with is an elegant, well rounded single malt that still does its initial bourbon maturation justice. I think on this evidence, Caperdonich is a sadly missed gem of Speyside. I love the dram here. The Glen Grant I tried here is the oldest from that distillery I've tasted, and it is wonderful. Either way, I still think of Glen Grant as being peers of bourbon cask matured Speyside whiskey. Thank you for listening.